Peter Imhof joined Family Center in 2012. The nonprofit organization offers addiction prevention and early intervention services to strengthen families and parents with a particular focus on caregivers of young children. Peter will be giving us a different perspective on the opioid crisis. Please welcome him up to the front.
All right, good to go. When did you first hear about fentanyl? For me, it was summer 2015. I went to lunch with a friend from Children's Services. They were telling me about the awful summer they were having. Parents dying of this new drug, fentanyl, children being left behind, Children's Services having to step in. Clearly, we have an opioid epidemic at our hands. This is what exponential growth looks like. And we can see and feel this epidemic in our community. This is nothing new. You already know this. Today, what I want to highlight is an aspect that is often overlooked, and that is prevention. What is it that we can do today to make sure that we don't have another addiction epidemic in the future? If we want to make any kind of headway on that question, we need to understand how addiction works. How is it that we humans can be addicted to something apparently mundane like sugar, or to something lethal like fentanyl? Well, the bottom line is those addictive substances take advantage of how we humans click. They take advantage of how our brains work. The reward system of our brain is being hijacked. And when we eat a piece of chocolate, we feel really awesome. And that is true for other addictive substances as well. Now, we're not all eating chocolate all day long, every day. There's more to our brains than the reward system. How my brain works today depends on what my genes say and the brain development that I've experienced. Let's talk about research for a minute. The Adverse Childhood Experiences study from the United States interviewed 17,000 middle-class Americans and asked them about their adverse childhood experiences. They tallied it up and then correlated it against all sorts of negative adult outcomes. And what they found was that if you have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, you have a much, much higher likelihood of being addicted to tobacco, alcohol, or illicit drugs. Now, I bet you have one of two reactions right now. Either you're thinking, when is Al finally getting to speak? Because he's so much more fun. Or you get a chance to think about your own childhood. How many adverse childhood experiences have you suffered? And if you find at least one adverse childhood experience in your life, you're like the rest of us. The majority of participants, 64%, reported at least one adverse childhood experiences. Now, while that is a sad statement and a sad fact, it also holds the key if we want to do something about future addiction. If we know where we need to step in and make a difference, we can do that and change how the future turns out. If we help children today that are having traumatic experiences, we can tip the scale from negative outcomes to positive outcomes by providing opportunities for healthy brain development, by supportive relationships with those children. How is that done? It's very simple. Everybody can do it. All of you are doing it every day. You are having respectful, supportive, responsive relationships with a child. In our profession, that's called serve and return. It can be as simple as playing peekaboo with a child. There are times in the human lifetime when this kind of serve and return is particularly impactful. It's the first 6 years of life, and it's the teenage years. That is when our brains and brain development is really rapid, and it's relatively easy to change the brain. But don't get me wrong, it's not like once we hit adulthood, there is no point in supporting healthy brain development. I'm a good example. I can present to you in a language that I did not speak when I was a child. I learned it as an adult. I was able to rewire my brain. But you can also hear my accent. I'm not as good in English as I would have been if I had learned it from childhood on. So let's summarize. We can do something about addiction in the future. We know where to intervene, which is where children suffer traumatic experiences, and we know how to do it through responsive serve and return interactions. $1 million question is, who is going to do it? And I hope that question is maybe obvious. It is you and I, it is we as a community who can make that difference. Nobody else has that time to support 64,000 people in our community. But we can prevent the next addiction epidemic.